Virochana continued. Only when one is filled with goodness is one qualified to listen to the exposition of the highest wisdom. Hence, one should constantly endeavour to educate the mind with purifying knowledge, and nourish the mind with the inner transformation brought about by the study of scriptures. When the mind has thus been transformed, it is able to reflect the truth without distortion. Then, without delay, one should endeavour to see the self. These two, self-realisation and cessation of craving, should proceed hand in hand simultaneously. So it's almost like we're being given a moral path here. Be good and study the scriptures. And I suppose it's trying to give some kind of hope that this will lead to something. And it might well do, it might well do. The main thing though, with goodness, being filled with goodness, I mean it's rather a vague description, is to be open, Because you cannot realise the truth if you're not open. If you've got interests to preserve, then you can't be open. If you've got beliefs that you want vindicated, then you're not being open. In fact, how can you be good if you're not being open? Being open means not operating in the world with regard to your own self-interest. And you can only do that if you're open to what's happening. If you've got no vested interest in vindicating your own worldview, your own sense of yourself and of how you believe the world to be. So studying the scriptures is, in terms of activities, is right up there. And there's a good opportunity there that you might actually stumble upon the truth because you're exposing yourself to it. That's assuming that the scriptures are actually of some worth. And then it says, without delay, one should endeavour to see the self. This is when the truth is realised. And these two, self-realisation and cessation of craving, should proceed hand in hand. And again, this ties in with what I've said before. If self-realisation is what is often regarded as liberation, then we practice right liberation. We continue with self-realisation. We continue turning the attention to the self, which is turning the attention to itself. And in doing so, we thin out the craving. The craving is the momentum which fuels the habit that our attention has of going all over the place. And this is what's meant by dispassion. Dispassion is when you're no longer interested in the objects of your craving. In other words, the craving has thinned out or maybe stopped altogether. True dispassion does not arise in one by austerity, charity, pilgrimage, etc., but only by directly perceiving one's own nature. So there's no techniques for seeing the self. There's no technique for self-realisation. It's something that either happens or doesn't. It's something that you either do or you don't. There's no technique. You have to be open to what self-realisation might be. If it seems quite strange or impossible or peculiar to this idea of turning the attention on itself, well, that's because the penny's not dropped yet. And you can consider what that means. You can try various exercises, maybe one time you'll strike lucky. But it's not something, you don't persevere with exercises, with spiritual exercises, in the hope that at some point in the future they'll deliver the goods. Spiritual exercises either work or they don't, and you should realise that straight away. Self-realisation isn't something that you approach gradually. It's really something which is immediate. So this end of suffering, end of craving, only comes about through dispassion, which arises by directly perceiving one's own nature. And there is no means for direct self-realization except right self-exertion. So you have to keep making that effort. If you haven't found self-realization yet, keep looking for it. Be open. This is the goodness, being open. And if you have found it, then you keep coming back to it. And this is self-exertion. Hence, one should give up dependence upon a god or fate, and by right self-exertion, firmly reject the seeking of pleasure. So it's not about God or gods. They've got nothing to do with it. In fact, they'll get in the way. There's a famous saying, if you meet the Buddha on the road, then kill him. Obviously it's not meant literally. If you've got an idea about the Buddha, about enlightenment, then you're not going to get there. You need to get rid of it. Destroy it, basically. Bypass it completely. And you reject the seeking of pleasure because you know it's not going to go anywhere. But the habit still persists. So we have to deal with our habits, our addictions. When dispassion matures, the spirit of inquiry arises in oneself. The spirit of inquiry strengthens dispassion. The two are independent, even as the ocean and the clouds are. These two, and also self-realization, are all intimate friends and always exist together. So we've got dispassion, the spirit of inquiry, and self-realization. These all always exist together. Hence, first of all, one should abandon all dependence on extraneous factors like God, and grinding one's teeth, and with intense right self-exertion, cultivate dispassion. Grinding one's teeth seems like a forceful exercise in will, but it means just not giving in to the habits. It's about not scratching the itchy spot. And rather than sitting there trying not to scratch the itchy spot, it's quite good if you can develop strategies, distractions, diversions or whatever. But there are times you really do just have to do your cold turkey, basically.